Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning to those joining us from Africa. Good afternoon to those joining us from Asia. We already have lots of people who've joined the webinar. I would suggest let's give it a minute and then we can start after that. I can see many more people actually joining. In the meantime, I would suggest just make sure that everybody can hear me well. If you can write in the chat box of Blue Jeans the role of your organization, whether you're an innovation fund applicant, whether you're an agri-tech, an agribusiness, a mobile operator, or something else. So please write in the chat box what your role is, what is the function of your business, and we're going to start in a few seconds. Thank you. Hello again, and welcome to the GSMA AgriTech webinar on making the case for agribusinesses to invest in last mile digitization. My name is Panos Lukos. I'm the Senior Insights Manager of the AgriTech Programme of the GSMA. In the room with me, I have a few colleagues of mine who are going to support with the moderation of the session. Before we start, I have a few quick housekeeping notes to make. The webinar will last approximately 1 hour, and the presentation will occupy the first 30-35 minutes, and we're going to have time for questions at the end. And during the webinar, you will be able to actually post questions using the Blue Jeans chat functionality. So this is the one you have already used, some of you, to say what your organization is doing and in the last few minutes. So please do ask questions. Please post your questions on the chat room, and my colleagues here are going to help with the moderation of the session. If we're not able to answer all of your questions today, we will endeavor to follow up with you afterwards with an email. And if you have any technical difficulties, again, please don't hesitate to let us know. I would also like to say that the webinar will be recorded, and we will make the recording available on the GSMA AgriTech webpage shortly. Moving on to the next slide. Here you can see the agenda for today's webinar. I will spend a minute or two to share information on the GSMA AgriTech Programme, for those of you who don't know as well. I will then look into the challenges that emerge in last mile sourcing and how digital agricultural tools can help address some of these challenges. If you're thinking about implementing digital technologies in the last mile in your day-to-day operations, I will share some best practices about measuring success, and I will finish the webinar with our latest and very exciting news on the Innovation Fund that we're currently running with DFID funding, and I will reveal a support package for agribusinesses and different pathways for partnership opportunities depending on what your organization is involved in. So before we get to the Innovation Fund news, which I believe is the reason of you joining today, I want to take a few moments to quickly introduce the activities of the AgriTech program, but also provide a little bit of context about digitization. Now, GSMA is the Global Trade Association of the mobile industry. Members of the GSMA are more than 750 mobile operators worldwide and more than 300 companies from the broader mobile ecosystem. We at GSMA represent the interests of mobile operators worldwide by getting involved in a lot of advocacy work. We're also involved in setting the technical specifications for various technologies such as 5G. And we run a number of industry-leading events, such as the Mobile World Congress that takes place in Barcelona every year at the end of February, beginning of March, but also many regional or topic-specific events, such as the M360, Mobile 360 series events in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and elsewhere. Now, within the GSMA, there is a department called Mobile for Development, and it is looking to support services that have a socioeconomic impact. The work that Mobile for Development does is supported by donors. What is interesting to mention at this point is that the mobile industry was one of the first sectors in the world to commit to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in 2016. The SDGs, as they're known, are an integral part of the work performed by Mobile for Development, which has so far impacted more than 58 million lives worldwide. Under Mobile for Development, there's a number of programs or teams, and each program is actually looking at a different vertical or topic. My program is the AgriTech program, which you can see at the bottom right-hand side of this slide, slide number 5. The AgriTech program is supporting the digitization of agricultural value chains to drive mobile financial inclusion for smallholder farmers. But we also have other programs, such as the Mobile Money program, accelerating the digital financial ecosystem for the underserved, or the Connected Women program, reducing the gender gap to increase digital and financial inclusion for women. You can find more information about all these other programs on the GSMA website, but now I'm going to actually spend a minute to tell you a few more things about the AgriTech program. The mission of the program, of the AgriTech program, is to support the development of equitable and sustainable food chains that empower farmers and strengthen local economies. Our program is funded by donors, by DFID, as I mentioned earlier, and the mission of the program is to bring together and support the mobile industry, agricultural sector stakeholders, such as agribusinesses, innovators and investors in agritech space to launch, improve, and scale impactful and commercially sustainable digital solutions for farmers in the developing world. Now, how do we actually engage with our stakeholders? And that is what the 3 circles on the right-hand side show. We see ourselves as catalysts who are actively involved in partnership brokering between different agriculture sector stakeholders. We also conduct a lot of research, either to support our own activities, but also to strengthen our views on the future of digital agriculture And we share this research with the broader community in the shape of blogs, reports, case studies, and so on. All this is actually publicly available on the resources page. You just need to visit the resources page of Mobile for Development, filtered by AgriTech, or even better, just let us know that you want to register for our newsletter, and you will receive news of all this regularly. We also organize and participate in events, from small, highly specialized workshops and webinars like this one, to the mobile industry's largest event, the Mobile World Congress that I mentioned a minute ago. And lastly, we do a lot of engagement work, and we offer technical assistance to design, develop, launch, and scale services that benefit smallholder farmers and the wider industry. And this is where the Innovation Fund comes in. Let's now move to the GSMA AgriTech Programme's focus areas. Up until a couple of years ago, the focus of the program was on the delivery of information services to farmers. During that time, we supported 12 mobile operators in Africa and Asia, launched agri-value-added services, which reached some 13 million smallholder farmers worldwide. But for the last two and a half years, our program's focus has actually broadened to support the design and launch of holistic digital enterprise solutions that enable the transition from paper to digital for a range of systems and processes that happen in the last mile. Now, in this context, the last mile is the web of relationships and transactions that happen in the intersection between the buyers of the crops, the agribusinesses, and the producers of the crops, the farmers. Besides solutions targeting the digitization of procurement, we also have a strong interest in climate resilience topics, and more specifically in models for using mobile for climate resilience solutions for farmers. As a matter of fact, we have actually published a fantastic report only yesterday on this topic. So I would very much suggest you look at the GSMA Agri-Resources webpage and read this report. Lastly, our focus extends all the way to farmers' financial inclusion. So farmers in the developing world often lack access to formal financial services, as they lack an economic identity that would allow financial service providers to better understand farmer needs and assess their credit worthiness. So by economic identity in this context, I'm referring to a dynamic citizen profile that captures an individual's life events, assets, and transaction history. However, there is an opportunity for mobile technology to support the creation of these economic identities. And we advocate digitization of farm records and creation of digital farmer profiles, which can support the development of the economic identity and allow farmers to access formal financial services, especially credit, which is massively important to support their day-to-day cultivation activities. Now, earlier on, I talked about holistic digital enterprise solutions that agribusinesses and farmers demand to address business challenges they are facing in last mile sourcing. In this table, in slide 8, we have identified the 6 main types of digital solutions where mobile technology can address some of these challenges. Those of you who regularly join our webinars or read our publications must have seen this picture, this table before. But for the benefit of those who are actually joining for the first time, I'm going to spend maybe a minute to go through the different types of digital solutions. Now, starting from the left, information services. This is an area where farmers often lack skills and access to agri-related information and do not follow best practice. And there is an opportunity here for agribusinesses who work with farmers in formal value chains to offer relevant information to farmers as part of an enterprise offering. For example, to train farmers on certification standards or to develop their skills. Then when it comes to mobile money, the second area from the left, we know that cash payments are risky and costly, both to agribusinesses and to farmers. And to address the pain points of dealing in cash, there is an opportunity for mobile money providers to digitize business-to-person payments, but also there is an opportunity to digitize transfers from the government, for example, for agricultural subsidies. Moving to the third one, digital profiles, and related to the previous one, the digital payments, the challenge is that farmers do not possess formal economic identities, which is something that we covered in the previous slides. So the mobile phone can be used as an authentication and verification tool, and can also be used to aggregate all these data points, which in combination with other farm and farmer level data can open up the pathway to farmers' financial inclusion. And then if we move to the right-hand side of this table, here we're looking at enterprise solutions for agribusinesses that can also benefit farmers. So we're talking about track and trace systems or farm management systems, the fourth digital tool from the left. These kind of tools respond to the needs of agribusinesses to ensure full and real-time visibility in the supply chain for traceability purposes, for certification of goods, and so on. And the last two areas, IoT applications for agriculture and agribusiness analytics, reflect solutions that are more nascent in developing markets. So I'm actually not going to talk about them today. Moving to slide 9. Here we see a snapshot of challenges that emerge across all stages of last mile sourcing. Value chain activities have been categorized in 5 stages, starting from farmer recruitment on the left and moving to capacity building, program management, crop purchasing, and financing. And in the row below, you can see examples of value chain activities that fall under each stage. In the one below, you can see example pain points that create inefficiencies and affect systems and processes in value addition. And in the last row, you can see examples of how digital technologies can support in addressing those pain points and create opportunities for value chain stakeholders. So let's look at a specific example here. In farmer recruitment, here in gray on the left, farm and farmer profiling often happens manually using pen and paper. Usually at farm gate, or maybe sometimes in the village square, where the commodity buyer is running events to recruit and onboard farmers. However, manual profiling is time-consuming and disorganized. And as a result of that, it may hinder crop forecasting for the next season, which is the thing on every agribusiness's minds. So manual record keeping makes reconciling input loans a challenging and very tedious process, which is prone to errors. And it is not an exaggeration to say that there are people at the back office whose job is just that, to digitize these manual records, although we have also come across many cases of agribusinesses who maintain these records on paper, filed somewhere in the office. Now, under these circumstances, a flexible digital tool permits targeted data collection in a variety of formats. A tool could take the form of a mobile application that allows agribusiness field staff who are also responsible for farm recruitment and profiling to capture this data digitally. And when the handset is then found in cellular connectivity, the data is synced with the cloud, and everyone in the organization has access to it. So everyone in the organization can see the profile of the newly recruited farmer, the location and size of the farm, the types of crops, the age of the trees, the farmer's needs, and so on. Let's now look at another example, that of financing at the right-hand side in gray again. Typical value chain activities that fall under financing include farmer payments, advances and loans, and receipt issuing. No matter where in Africa or Asia agribusinesses operate, they're facing some common challenges that revolve around the high cost and risk of dealing in cash. So when do agribusinesses experience that? When moving cash from the bank to the head office, when moving cash from the head office to the district managers, when district managers replenish procurement clerks, but also with farmers, when farmers get paid for crops they sold to the buyers. In addition to this, manual reconciliation of payments is lengthy and prone to errors, and paper receipts are also prone to falsification. And why is this important? Because many times when we're actually dealing with certification programs, there is a need for clarity, and paper receipts are not supporting that. So how can digital technologies help? Mobile money, for example, when available in the country, it allows transition from cash to digital payments, and it creates transaction transparency. While digital push notifications replace paper receipts, and they also offer transparency and clarity to all parties, and they empower the farmer. How then can value chain digitization support agribusiness activities? What are the use cases where digital tools can create operational efficiencies in the interactions between the producers and buyers of crops? I'm more than happy to actually look at the questions that you have on this topic, but here are some ideas about how digital technologies can support this. Digital tools can manage last mile transactions, and we spoke a minute ago about how mobile money can actually reduce the cost and risk of dealing in cash. And digital tools can also support certification and traceability programs, which are massively important in the case of cash crops, such as cocoa, coffee, tea, which are key crops in many sub-Saharan African and Asian countries. They can also integrate multiple data sets and create customized visualizations and action plans. And digital tools can also support direct communication with field staff, with farmers, and with other agricultural sector stakeholders in the field. And by doing so, agribusiness buyers can efficiently audit a large number of farmers for compliance and certification programs. They can establish effective communication channels with these stakeholders. They can allow assessment of individual farmer and community needs to deliver higher impact. And over time, invest in loyalty of the farmers. Now, evidence from this field shows that digital tools can eliminate the high cost of cash payments. And there is actually a very interesting webinar presentation talking about this in a pilot that was set in Uganda by Chagalani Coffee with support from SIGAP. So I would very much encourage you to have a look at that. In the long term, agribusinesses can experience significant business performance improvements, grow their revenues by meeting the forecasted demand for crops in an environmentally and socially sustainable way, and translate supply chain optimization to profitability growth. Now, key in determining the success of any digital agriculture initiative is an identification of relevant KPIs that align with business objectives. Think of KPIs as the drivers that can help you achieve your business objectives. KPIs that have clear timelines and commitment by all parties who are involved in this initiative. And besides KPIs that help you measure progress and extent to which strategic objectives have been achieved, it is also important to identify project implementation partners involved with choosing, tracking, measuring, and owning these KPIs. And this way, various stakeholders across the value chain can own activities and relevant KPIs that make up one of many sequential activities that work towards achieving the business objective. So this is massively important. The next slide, slide 14, offers examples of KPIs that the cocoa buyer in Ghana deployed to assess the success of a digital implementation project. For example, under farmer recruitment, what is the number of steps and time needed to create or to view individual farmer profiles, including training and transaction history? Another KPI that proved very valuable to the implementing organization Under program management, how much time is required to upload farmer training data, including modules, attendance, and results in the company's ERP system? Or under financing on the right-hand side, what is the amount of cash in circulation at the HQ in a given month, and how does this compare against the amount of cash that is lost or stolen? Now, before moving to the Innovation Fund, I want to show you a 3-minute video that describes one of the services we supported in Ghana last year in last mile digitization. And
over the years, cocoa has stood out to be one of our key economic drivers for Ghana. The agri sector remains this one singular growth opportunity for us, because most of our people, especially those in the rural communities, depend on farming to actually get by.
Mobile money providers can drive financial inclusion and increase their rural customer base by digitizing value chain payments. With the GSMA's support, MTN Mobile Money is piloting a mobile-based solution that enables agribusinesses to digitize payments to farmers for the procurement of crops.
The partnership allows the two organizations to do a user experience research and to go down to the grassroots to talk to agribusinesses.
MTN's M-Agric is a mobile-based application that enables purchasing clerks to record crop procurement from farmers digitally and pay farmers for their produce instantly via mobile money. The application aims to address the inefficiencies of cash-based payments and the challenges of using paper-based systems.
It has improved transparency. The moment a PC buys a bean from a farmer, I notice it on my platform, in my room, or everywhere I am, where there is network.
Digitizing payments with MTN Mobile Money in the agricultural last mile can increase security for both farmers and for purchasing clerks.
Mobile money na bano,
Mobile money can reduce farmers' travel time and waiting time for payments and can give agribusinesses real-time visibility of the procurement process.
Me niema manage mobile money no hone say. First na mobile money ni ni ho. So the cocoa no kwa. There be wo ho aska wo ho wo de be ma. There be nso wo ho a obekọ wo sisika ni ho. And so am say we be ide. Unya ye ya na.
Digital payments can serve as an entry point to financial inclusion for previously unbanked farmers.
Okay, I appreciate when I go. What's that for obasa? If you're not getting a mobile money on go how? The hand is coming in a pay for him. I can in a mobile money. Lole kenene market pio. Ke hiami local market. Se first ole ko oyango scan now hamu. Ke pay basa. If you're not learning a mobile money on go. If you find him.
Let's now move to the next slide, the last few slides of the presentation about the Innovation Funds, which I believe is the reason most of you must have joined this webinar. Now, in June this year, the GSMA AgriTech Programme launched the GSMA Innovation Funds for the digitization of agricultural value chains, with support from DFID and the UK government. There's a small technical problem in the room. We're actually trying to progress to the next slide. So if you can just give us a few seconds. It looks like the presentation is not moving. Apologies for this. So carrying on, in June this year, as I was saying, we launched the GSMA Innovation Fund for the digitization of agricultural value chains. Up to 8 grants of £220,000 each are being made available to support projects of 24 months duration. There will only be one project per market, per country. So we're actually talking about 8 projects in 8 different countries of Africa and Asia that, as a minimum, they should include the primary use cases of: number 1, digitizing procurement records and smallholder farmer profiles. Number 2, digitizing payments to smallholder farmers via mobile money. And number 3, digitizing communication and providing advisory services to smallholder farmers. Now, the AgriTech team will offer in-kind support and consultancy services to assist with the development of the business plans and also the service implementation. We're talking about market research, user-centric design, business intelligence, user testing with agribusiness staff, and that is exactly where you, agribusinesses, come in. Now, the application process is well underway and is expected to conclude in December, when an independent innovation fund panel will assess the applications and select the successful 8. And although only mobile money providers and in some cases agritech were eligible to apply for funding, what applicants need is to secure commitments from agribusinesses to pilot the service with and scale it up across value chains and commodity buyers. Another important piece of information about the fund is the list of markets which are eligible for digital implementation projects. In this slide, slide 17, you can see the list of markets in Africa and Asia. The majority of Western, Eastern, and Southern African countries are included. In Asia, the list of countries is actually more limited. However, some of Asia's largest markets that play a key role in the production of cash crops along formal value chains are included, such as Indonesia, Pakistan, and India. So what's in for agribusinesses then? We have categorized agribusinesses into clients and partners, and you can see the criteria for the differentiation in this table. Agribusiness clients can benefit from design research that provides greater visibility into last mile operations. They will also enjoy a subsidized service trial period to test the service and play a role in its customization. And if you want to become an agribusiness partner, someone who already understands the benefits of digitization, someone who is ready to get involved in the first pilot, someone who can become the thought leader in these fields and advocate to other agribusinesses about the positive impact of digital technologies, then the benefits are actually greater. In addition to what I mentioned earlier about agribusiness clients, agribusiness partners benefit from risk capital, always via the late applicants, to mitigate the risks in last mile digitization. And they will also receive funding to join closed and open door GSMA events to discuss their experiences from digitization with other innovation fund grantees and agribusiness partners. There are some responsibilities that come with this, primarily to participate in user experience and product design field research, and offer support to the lead applicant to understand the wider agribusiness and agricultural landscape of the operating markets. All of the information on these slides and much more information is actually available in the GSMA AgriTech webpage under Innovation Fund. So I would certainly recommend whoever is interested in finding out more about our innovation funds and about the role that you can play to visit the webpage of AgriTech Programme. In the next slide, in slide 19, and I'm getting close to the end of the presentation, you can see the Innovation Fund timeline. Today is the 3rd of October, and applicants have until the end of October to submit their business plans, which will be assessed by the independent fund panel in December. Now, between now and then, we're also planning another activity, a value chain mapping activity, during which agribusiness profiling is also going to take place. And the aim is to assess the suitability of value chains for digital technologies and also identify agribusinesses that operate in those value chains. Agribusiness profiles are then going to be shared with innovation fund applicants so that they can be considered for the first pilots to become agribusiness clients or agribusiness partners as per the previous slides. So what kind of partnership opportunities are there? If you're an agribusiness or if you're part of a group with operations in any of the markets that I showed to you a couple of slides ago, please get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. We can match you with an applicant consortium before the 31st of October, which is the date for the submission of the business plans. We can also include you in the value chain mapping and agribusiness profiling exercise, which runs between the 9th of October and the 10th of November. And that exercise will involve a maximum 2-hour call with a member of staff from your operation that knows well the procurement activities, that can discuss topics around the average frequency and size of transactions that a single farmer receives, and some other questions. So it's actually a very light touch exercise, and we would very much encourage you to participate in this. If you're an innovation fund business plan applicant, there is some great news for you too. After this webinar, we may be able to match you with some agribusinesses interested to join your consortium. But if you also have your own agribusiness contacts and you need support in identifying the right ones and profiling them to strengthen your business plan, please contact your market engagement manager as soon as possible, because we're here to help you. Lastly, if you're an agritech and you're already working with agribusinesses or are connected to agribusinesses, please also get in touch, because we can introduce them to the consortium partners, and they can also benefit from funding, as I explained a couple of slides ago, from the Innovation Funds. Now, this takes us to the end of the presentation. We've had a lot of questions come through during the webinar, so I'm not sure we'll get through them all today, but we'll try to answer as many as we can. Now, before we move to Q&A, I will pause for a minute to allow the audience to post more questions in the chat of Blue Jeans, and we will carry on in a minute or so from now. So I can see a question coming in. You mentioned frequency and size of transactions. What else will you include in the agribusiness profiles? So what we want to know when we profile an agribusiness, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a very light touch activity, so the profile is going to be rather high level. The reason for the profiling is for us to understand the procurement process of that agribusiness, but also to understand some more stuff about how procurement takes place and the size of the supplier base to assess the suitability of that value chain and that agribusiness for digital tools. Different agribusinesses may end up with different levels of suitability, if you like. We would like to understand what is the primary value chain that this agribusiness is involved in. Also to estimate the addressable markets across the country for this primary value chain, to know how big of a market that is at country level. And as you rightly said so, some procurement particulars, such as the frequency and size of the transactions, also the seasons during which procurement takes place, the method of payment to the farmers, is it cash payment or checks to banks, or maybe checks delivered by collection trucks to individuals. Some stuff about contract farming, that's going to be also important, whether participation in certification or traceability programs takes place, because these are, as we mentioned earlier, typical use cases where digital technologies can really play a beneficial role in your agribusiness operations. What is very important to mention here is that agribusinesses involved in direct procurement are the ones that we're looking for, because there is this direct relationship with the farmer, which can ensure that the benefits, not just to them, but also to the farmer, the socioeconomic benefits I mentioned earlier, are going to be delivered to the max. Now, moving to the next question. Do you already have a system or solutions for economic IDs? My interest is for last mile tracking and provision of loans. There are lots of agritechs that track data, farm and farmer data, which can support the creation of economic IDs for farmers. For example, the MAgric service, the video that we showed earlier, this is a service that was delivered by MTN Ghana and a few other partners. It tracks a lot of data in the cocoa value chain about the farmers, and this data can help in the design, in the development of an economic ID. There are other agritechs as well. I'm not going to recommend any on this call, but there are certainly many agritechs out there, especially in Africa, but also in Asia, that do exactly that. They offer a digital tool in the form of an application that can operate on Android, sometimes on other operating systems as well. The application can be customizable to the needs of the agribusiness, and it allows the tracking of farm and farmer data, such as the name, the location of the farmer, the size of the farm, the number of people in the family of the farmer, the type of crops that the farmer cultivates, the support that this farmer needs, the progress with training or other programs and initiatives that the agribusiness is running with these farmers, such as traceability and certification programs and so on. So all of these data jointly can help develop this economic identity. So please have a look. There's a lot of names coming up in our publications as well. We have recently published a report on the Kenyan digital agriculture markets, on the Indonesian digital agriculture markets. I mentioned the report on climate, which was published only this week. So there are lots of names in there, and they can certainly offer some guidance in terms of agritechs that offer solutions for economic IDs. What value chains of crops qualify for funding? That's a very interesting question. So when we are looking for suitable value chains, what we're looking to get is value chains that have the following characteristics. Number one, we're looking for value chains that where procurement happens directly with the farmer. We're looking at formal value chains as a starting point because they offer more opportunities for a smoother implementation of a digital tool. And also we're looking probably at value chains that are export-oriented or value chains where traceability and certification programs play a key role. We're looking at value chains that have an extended harvest period, during which there's a number of transactions happening between farmers, the producers of crops, and agribusinesses, the buyers of crops. So basically, just to give you a few examples of this type of value chains, we're talking about cocoa, for sure, coffee, we're talking about tea, which is a very important crop in South Asia as well as East Africa, milk, also a value chain with a high frequency of transactions, but also some fruit value chains as well, rubber in some cases, and other value chains which might have the majority, if not all, of the characteristics I mentioned earlier. Obviously, any suggestion now is very high level about the suitability of value chains. So all of this needs to actually be assessed at country level. And the exercise, the value chain mapping exercise that we're planning to run between the 9th of October and the 10th of November is going to do exactly that. For the eligible markets, we're going to support the assessment of the suitability of value chains and identify organizations, agribusinesses that operate in those value chains. But in brief, these are the characteristics we're looking to get. There's another question about how much are we looking to award per successful innovation fund applicants. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 8 grants that will go to 8 different applications or applicant consortiums. Each grant, there's going to be only 1 grant per country. So there's going to be 8 grants in 8 different countries. You saw the eligible countries earlier. So the majority of sub-Saharan African countries and many countries in Asia as well. And the selection of the successful applications so that the 8 grants can be awarded is going to take place in December, in the first half of December, and there's going to be an independent innovation fund panel that is going to do that. After that, the GSMA is going to announce the news to the successful applicants, and the contracting process can take place at the end of February or March next year, so that the technical implementation can begin shortly after that. We have our market engagement team in-house, and these guys are ready to jump into the challenge and opportunity to support the successful applicants. So there is an opportunity for you as well, the agribusinesses, to join these applicant consortiums. So please let us know if interested, either to participate in value chain mapping or to join a consortium, or actually both of them. And you can do that by sending an email to my email address, and I have it on this last slide as well. I have already joined, another question, I have already joined an applicant consortium. Can I still participate in your profiling exercise? The answer is yes, certainly. We want you to participate in the profiling exercise because we want to know more about your operations. We want to actually make sure that we are on top of the procurement activities and the details that play a role in how you source crops from farmers in the implementation country. So please get in touch, and we can certainly include you in the value chain mapping and agribusiness identification exercise that is running in the next few weeks. just to make sure, there is already a long list. Make sure that this is clear with you. There's already a long list of business plan applicants. The application process started in June. The first step, as I showed in the timeline slides, ran until the end of July. That was the concept note stage. We received many applications, and some of them moved into the business plan stage, which is running now until the end of October. So the application process is now closed. However, the matching of agribusinesses to business plan applicants consortiums is open and ongoing. And that is where we can offer value by matching you to business plan applicants in their markets. There's another question about that says the following: my agribusiness is reluctant to join the project because of the costs they are likely to incur. How can we overcome this? Now, as I mentioned in the slide earlier, the agribusinesses that join the consortium are going to benefit from risk capital, especially if they join as an agribusiness partner. And the activities and the various work streams that are going to take place in terms of user experience or other research activities that will take place on the ground, you're indirectly going to benefit from the grants, from the funding that the lead applicants will receive from the GSMA, from DFID via the GSMA. And there's always going to be a lot of in-kind supports. In-kind support from our market engagement team, but also in-kind supports from the rest of the guys here of the AgriTech program around value chain assessment and so on. So I would certainly recommend you look into it in more detail. There is certainly going to be opportunities to leverage the funds indirectly and become the thought leader in this process by joining as an agribusiness partner. Or if you're not ready to actually take on this role, there's always the opportunity to join as an agribusiness client as well. Obviously, mobile money is going to be a key aspect of any project, because what we're looking to do is to actually use mobile money to digitize payments, procurement payments that the agribusiness is making to the farmers, which is going to take off a major risk from you, but also support the farmers through the transactional data to develop this economic identity. So, as I mentioned during the presentation earlier, there is evidence from other projects out there, like the Chiagalani project in Uganda, where the cost of making payments to the farmers using mobile money may even be lower than the cost of paying farmers in cash. Despite the various fees that may apply, the cost is actually lower. So there's certainly an opportunity to take also advantage of these lower costs in your implementation markets. There's a question about value chains again, whether we're actually looking for high or low frequency of transactions. What we're looking at in an ideal world is actually a high frequency of transactions that are spread across the year. So a typical value chain that involves that is milk, where you may have daily transactions, if not daily, then weekly transactions to the farmers, the producers. Or tea, which also involves very frequent transactions across the majority of months of the year. So in the case of crops, many staple crops like maize or wheat Usually in those crops, there's only one transaction per year, so these are less suitable for a typical digitization initiative. Can a financial service provider apply for the Innovation Fund, seeking partnership for enhancing financial inclusion through loans to smallholder farmers? The question to this, this question is actually very interesting. The answer to this question is that you cannot apply as a lead applicant because the application process has already closed, and because to apply for funding, you would have to be either a mobile money provider or an agritech in the case of two markets. However, you can certainly join an applicant consortium. And as I mentioned, we're going to end up with 8 different applicant consortiums in 8 separate markets. So you can certainly join one of those consortiums, and it's not late to do that. There is certainly an opportunity to do that now. And if you are interested in joining one of those consortiums, I would certainly recommend you get in touch with us. Can any agribusiness participate in the profiling exercise in those markets? So the agribusiness needs to operate in the markets I mentioned earlier. We're interested, we're looking at a number of markets in sub-Saharan Africa and some markets in Asia as well. We're also looking at agribusinesses that are involved in direct procurement from farmers and which regularly procure from a significant number of farmers, directly and not via middlemen. We're also looking for agribusinesses that pay directly those farmers in cash. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at a frequent transaction pattern where transactions are actually spread across the year. Finally, we are ideally looking for agribusinesses that have prioritized business problems which align with the objectives of the funds and are clearly motivated to actually pilot digital technologies to fix those problems. So if this sounds like interesting to you, I would certainly recommend you get in touch after this webinar. We're getting close to 11 o'clock here in the UK, and there's been quite a few questions coming up. Maybe I'm going to take one more question, and then the rest we can answer it via email. Cash out as well as push-pull costs are still a big hindrance to farmers joining a digitization project. How can GSMA help? That is very true, yes. There is always this cost that farmers need to take on. However, I mentioned earlier about this project in Uganda, where even when you take into account the cash out cost, the cost of paying using mobile money is actually lower than the cost of paying in cash. There's also other stuff that needs to be taken into account, such as the risk to life. So when paying in cash, there is a significant risk to the individuals involved in the transfer of cash at different stages of the value chain. So the cash out cost obviously is there, but there's always this opportunity to also educate the farmers to be able not just to cash out immediately after they receive the payments, but to use this money, especially in a well-developed mobile money ecosystem in the places where the farmers reside, to make payments using mobile money rather than cashing out at the local agent. Obviously, some of the funding that will go to the grantees, the successful applicants, is going to go towards educating the farmers and supporting digital literacy of those farmers. So there's going to be an opportunity to actually support not just the agribusiness, but also the farmers to avoid cashing out and using mobile money in a regular way. I would very much like to thank you at this point for joining the webinar. It's been very satisfying for me and the people here in the room who I would like to help for their support in the last hour. Any question that comes to mind, please let us know. There's a number of partnership opportunities I mentioned, especially if you're an agribusiness, but also if you're an Innovation Fund business plan applicant, there is a number of actions, or if you're an agritech, so please get in touch with us. You can either email me, plucos@gsma.com, or the AgriTech Programme email address. If you're an Innovation Fund applicant, please get in touch with your market engagement manager, and we're here to support you. Thank you very much again for joining this morning. Goodbye.